Is it grief support? You bet. Is it estate settlement support? You bet. Is it just simple human care and compassion to check in on them with meaningful dates and human connection? Absolutely. That relationship should continue on because that's human.
I saw a TikTok the other day with Theo Vaughn, and it was a staged like advertisement for, I don't remember what brand it was, but the name was hard to say. And so it was like a 5-minute back and forth of them, like the Pan situation on Step Brothers. So I kind of feel like that with Elevia. Is it Elevia, Eleva? Like,
so the root word is elevate, so you can start there. So it's Elevia. And, you'd think that after 6 years of everyone getting used to DomaniCare, that if we were going to rebrand, we would do something more simple, but it's all a part of the story,
It is part of the story. Give me part of the story, a synopsis if somebody doesn't know.
Yeah, rebranding is an exhausting but kind of fun experience to go through. I mean, we looked at hundreds and hundreds of different names. And when you really get down to like the core of what we are trying to accomplish is, we want to be partners with the people that we do business with, and we want to take it up a notch. So like, think of as you're ascending a mountain, and you're trying to elevate your business and your partnerships and your outreach, et cetera, that we're there with you on that journey to make that happen. And then when you think about the consumers, the families, the grieving people that funeral professionals are working with, we're trying to elevate that experience too and just make it better in the aftermath of one of the hardest times of their life. So we loved kind of that origin word, and that was how Elevia was born. And even I still struggle to say it right sometimes, and that's okay. We'll get there eventually.
As long as people know what it is, it doesn't matter.
Well, a ton of people don't know too, the icon on the logo, if you look at it closely, some people will say it looks like a butterfly, but it's actually an emoji, a smiley face emoji, and it's turned so as if they were both talking to each other. So kind of a nod to the text messaging digital world that we're into, but
that's cool.
Fun.
I didn't know that. I like that. That's neat.
Now you'll look at it a little differently. Yeah.
Now you need a marketing campaign where you take 2 smiling emojis and then morph them into your logo and like launch it that way, like explain it.
Totally. Yep. Yeah, we'll get there.
Well, cool. All right. So, I mean, what is it that you do? Like, what's the core? Like, is text messaging still like the bread and butter?
Yeah, for sure. I think, the core, everything runs through text primarily. But I think what we've expanded to, DomaniCare, and what we were known for and still is very foundational to our business, is Aftercare. But we really are a consumer experience, consumer journey platform, because those partners that have been with us for 5, 6, 7 years even have really understood foundationally what we do. And they also get creative with, can you do this as well? And could you follow up on pre-need? And when you have leads come in through the website, can you follow up with those? So it's anytime you want to continue those journeys and do it in an automated way, but still a very human and personalized way, that's where we fit. And so generally, whenever we have a new partner come on, we always kind of start with Aftercare because it's very simple. It's kind of a pain point that they're usually trying to solve. And there's a lot of ROI mechanisms there through Google reviews and, lead generation and things of that nature. But once they get those foundational things, they see the picture and they want to expand upon that. And some of the smartest firms are definitely taking advantage of that. So it's been fun to see the evolution of it. And that was kind of part of the rebrand too, was not to distance ourselves from Aftercare because it's so core and we're very passionate about that, but to really expand the vision and help funeral professionals know that kind of the CX world it needs to be a part of their business in order to stay relevant kind of now and into the future.
Oh, you said Aftercare 4 times. Okay, yeah. So I'm gonna ask you about Aftercare because originally DomaniCare launches and it was Aftercare, and up to that point, Aftercare had always been like a couple handwritten cards or printed cards that got emailed out. So you changed kind of a new perception of aftercare. So I want to ask you, and I've been waiting for years for someone to really figure out what the heck, what is aftercare? What does aftercare mean?
Yeah, and I think it's evolving. I think it has been an afterthought for a lot of funeral professionals for many years, and I think it's now emerging as a very, very strong pillar in funeral service. We have at need, we have pre need, and aftercare is becoming as important, if not more important, than pre need in many ways. Obviously, in the after realm is where you could also do Google reviews. We all know how important Google is, especially with the transient world that we all live in. But what is aftercare? Uh, each organization can kind of establish what that needs to be. But when there is, especially with grieving families, when they have a good experience with the funeral home and then they fall off of a cliff and they have no idea where they're going, and that's where we have failed in that endeavor. So that's where we have been expansive. Is it grief support? You bet. Is it estate settlement support? You bet. Is it just simple human care and compassion to check in on them with meaningful dates and human connection? Absolutely. That relationship should continue on because that's human. We care about humans and how are you doing? And I think what we've learned just in that first 2 to 3 week period after is where all of a sudden their journey begins. And yet, if they don't have anyone there helping them navigate that aftermath, it is a devastating experience for those families. And they can go to the great abyss of Google, they can go to ChatGPT and try to find answers. But the long and short of it is, no one is better set up to help support them in that than funeral professionals. And I think if funeral professionals can look a little bit more beyond the narrow scope of funeral service, they will see that there's ample opportunity for them to also grow their business and to add different streams of revenue and to help in that arena. And historically, that just wasn't done because we've just been we've prioritized at need and for obvious reason. But when we've done that, we've also neglected a tremendous ability for us to kind of expand the impact that funeral service can have on communities and on families. So I know that that's not like a real dialed in answer because I think it is a little bit in flux, but there's a lot of things that are emerging as you dive into it. And I think the important thing is to listen to the voice of the customers. They will tell you the answers of what aftercare is, because if you ask them what they want or what they think they should receive, that gives you the answer right there. And we learned, we did a pretty extensive study. And when we just asked these people that had lost someone, where should you receive grief support? 65% of them said from the funeral home. So you give that to the funeral home and they go, oh, what? It's like,
Yeah.
okay, well, if 65% think that you're the one that should be doing it and you're not, there's opportunity there and there's something that you need to do. So
how have you baked grief support into what you do through text messaging?
Yeah, so a lot of people are familiar with our other platform, forgrief.com. That was built, again, listening to the customers. We had about 30% of the people on that initial campaign that we would do that would ask for additional grief or bereavement resources. And when we would go to the funeral homes and say, what do you have that we can provide them? Because we're just representing you. The first funeral home said, we have some pamphlets that they can come pick up at the funeral home. And, that's not good enough, especially in 2025. And then the other one said, we have a government link. Here it is. It has a directory of all the therapists in the state. Have them pick one. And again, if you have 65% of the people think that they need to get the support and that's the support that they're getting, then we have a massive gap. And there's also great opportunity. And so, we scoured and looked for what is a good resource that we could give that's available for rural funeral homes and metro America, and there wasn't anything. And so when that happens, we try our best with the resources we have to bring a solid solution to the table and say, how can we help? And so that was where For Grief came. We recently in October kind of expanded that by creating co-branded landing pages. And the reason for that is so that they can gather more contact information of guests and visitors that they give their unique QR code to. so that they can continue to stay in contact with those individuals. So we collect email and phone numbers. That data is theirs, and the funeral home can then do continual outreach campaigns beyond just the informant. And that's really important because there's a lot of people that are struggling. And the more good you do in the community and to the surrounding family members at that time, the impact that you have will generate business, no doubt.
So does that outreach come from the funeral home, or is that outreach
Yeah.
coming from For Grief or through Elevia?
It comes from the funeral home, especially when we get the contact information. That's where they can then do campaigns, on behalf of that. And the co-branded landing page has the For Grief logo and it has the funeral home logo, but that gives more credit to the funeral home, saying that they're the ones that are providing these resources. Where before it was just For Grief, and
Sure.
they were just referring to an outside, grief entity. But now they're taking more credit and ownership for the resources that they're able to provide.
And then what spurred the partnership on estate planning or estate settlement? And I'm reading the connecting director's press release,
Yeah.
and we'll get to the 1 million families served here in a second too. But talk to me about estate settlement and how that works.
Yeah, there's a lot of different estate settlement type solutions that have popped up recently. That was never something that we wanted to build ourselves. And so we knew we needed to partner with somebody to be able to do that. Why do we do it? This is the other funny thing. Again, all of our decisions are very much stem from data. But when we were doing focus groups and we were doing these outside surveys, when we would then, we started doing this asking to understand grief initially. But when we were talking to all these people about grief, their responses back to us were all of the pains and problems associated with settling the estate. That was their answer. And you're like, oh gosh, okay, there's there's something here too, in that it's very synergistic. It's almost like you can't have one with the other, and that if you're just trying to solve grief but you're not solving the estate settlement side, then there still is a massive problem that you're not helping resolve. And so we kind of went and scoured and looked at a lot of the solutions that were out there. We ultimately settled on partnering with Alex. They're an organization that's been around about a year and a half, 2 years. Fantastic people, amazing technology solutions that are able to pull in all of the elements of the estate pretty instantaneously. So you can find out about all life insurance policies, cars, properties, every asset that would be attached to that estate. And many families are finding out in the sums of $100,000, $200,000 that they didn't know existed. But then not only that, they also have the resources to be able to line them up if they don't have people to be able to help do that. And we can even work with, if the funeral home has attorneys that they refer, et cetera, we can plug those into the ecosystem as well. But the cool thing about this partnership that I love, number one, it's no additional cost to the funeral home to do it, no additional cost to the family to do that expert estate settlement review. So there's huge cost savings and value add that's being given through that process. But the other thing I loved about Alex is that they're not just a technology solution, like a SaaS solution that you just plug in information and you get an output. They also are very human based. And so there's humans that are helping them guide them through that process. And as you know, with Elevia, yes, we do text messaging, but it's not robots, we're humans. And so we were very aligned in vision on that, of making sure that humans are still helping guide people through the aftermath of that loss. So terrific organization. The results have been huge ever since, and we've loved that partnership. So it's been a great new kind of addition to the product.
Cool. So you now served over 1 million families through Elevia. I mean, can you narrow it down? So probably not. One or two things. Like, what are the two coolest things that you've learned through serving 1 million families?
Oh gosh, a lot of, like, if you go back to the origin of how this even came to be, you've heard my story with my dad, dying at 46 and us kind of falling off of a cliff. I think you combine that coupled with the world that we live in. Um, we've never been more connected as a society, but also felt more lonely. And human connection is just so crucial. And I remember the first time I launched a campaign. I had a funeral home that was kind enough to give me 40 contacts and said, go ahead, test it out. And I did that. And from day one all the way through to today, we see about a 50% response rate on that first message. And when I see people open up on those text messages, it's not just a yes or just a thanks or, they really do open up in a pretty heartfelt and meaningful way. And so, we always joke that Elizabeth is probably one of the most famous funeral professionals. And I think that she is. Many people use her name to represent our team's efforts. And we see her pop up in surveys. We see her pop up on Google reviews. We have gift baskets that are sent to funeral homes with her name on them. And something as simple as a text message on a meaningful date or at the right time just speaks volumes. I think all of us appreciate that, right? Like if you get a birthday text from
Yeah.
somebody, even if you haven't seen them or talked to them in a year, and somebody remembered you on that day, it means something. You're like, gosh, that was pretty cool. And it's even more meaningful, I think, in that first year. And now I've just seen that happen on repeat times a million. And you think it's a million people, but then it's a million people times we do at least 6 to 8 campaigns for each of those individuals on an annual basis. I mean, we're talking millions and millions of conversations that are happening. And I just think it's a ripple effect. It's just one good deed, one good thing that you do has this ability to change the course of people's just days and lives. It seems small and simple, but it's those small and simple things compounded really can make an impact. And I believe that wholeheartedly. And to just see that and read it over and over again. If I ever need a pick me up, I just need to log into our portal and I see the good work that my team's doing every day. And it just immediately puts me in a good mood. We're doing good work.
So was Elizabeth modeled after somebody? Like does Elizabeth have a tone that embodies a real person? I mean, Elizabeth is a real person texting, but
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, the name is funny. It just was one of our employees that we decided to test out that name, and it landed really well. We tested lots of different names, and even sometimes if we see people and their campaign response rate goes down, we tell them, "Hey, maybe try Elizabeth and see," and it goes up. So. There's, I think, an element of trust. With even just the name, oddly enough. And I don't know what the psychology is behind it, but it does definitely
yeah,
work. But yeah, I mean, we spend a lot of time in training our team. Last year, we did a pretty intensive 6-week grief course, for example, with some of the grief professionals that help us for grief. To make sure our team's educated. They need to be grief informed, but they're not like grief certified. But yeah, we definitely have a flair about our outreach, and Elizabeth has evolved, but at the core, it's always been that human connection and care and empathy above and beyond results, like, if that makes sense. Because
yeah,
when we do that, results naturally follow.
right,
And so we lead with that. I had a funeral home that I met with last week, and they were asking us, okay, do you limit the number of responses, and do we pay based on responses? And I said, no, not at all. Like, if we have somebody that needs to have a little conversation because they're feeling really lonely and we can talk to them, then we do. And we definitely give our team the freedom to do what they feel is right by those grieving families on behalf of the funeral home. And when we do that, it's like everybody wins every time when you just try to do the right thing and connect. And so she's evolved. It's definitely a team that does it, and we've kind of morphed in our style with time. But I think that the core from beginning until today has still remained very much the same.
Elizabeth. Who would have
Elizabeth.
thought? Okay. So
Yep.
prior to Elevia, it
Mm-hmm.
was DomaniCare. DomaniCare was bought under the Homesteaders brand. Is Elevia still under
Yeah.
that Homesteaders umbrella?
Yeah. So it was just a rebrand. Yeah. The ownership structure of the entity is still exactly the same.
It's cool. So I got to ask you this: if God hadn't tapped you to build Elevia, what would you be doing?
Yeah. I mean, I tell the story often. I got my master's degree in real estate development. Real estate development. My dad was a commercial real estate developer, and um, he died in 2008, and that was when the real estate market crashed. And that was where the pivot happened. If it wasn't for the loss of my dad, I don't know that I would have gone into funeral service in general, which then therefore would not have led to Elevia. But I think if I always encourage everyone, my employees or anyone I talk to lean into your strengths and what you're just inherently good at. And I think that for me, I am just deeply passionate about the consumer experience and consumer journeys. I think that the root of that is I was a consumer in that I planned my dad's funeral and I experienced the aftermath and I viewed it and said, how can I make that experience better? And so I think you could probably say that I would have landed in the consumer realm somehow because I just inherently, it doesn't matter if I'm at Disneyland or if I'm at the movie theaters or the grocery store or I'm talking to the Delta representative on the phone. I'm always thinking of like, how can I make this experience better? Or how did this business totally drop the ball and made me want to say some cuss words? I constantly am thinking in that realm. So it's just been a gift that I'm able to bring that at least to the funeral side of things and help make that experience better. Because I think funeral professionals do an amazing job. I don't ever want their role to disappear from communities. It's so vital. And I think sometimes people are in such a fog, they don't quite see that. And we now are able to bring even more attention to it, I think, because of the care and the attention that we bring in the aftercare realm. They think about that experience repeatedly over that first year and how impactful it was on their family. And so it's really cool. I love helping, businesses make that better. I love helping the families that they serve make that better. And it just makes the whole profession better when we do that.
Are you doing anything else outside of death care with text messaging? I mean, it seems like something that would go in a lot of different professions.
Yeah, yes and no. I would say that we've broadened to the end of life sphere. So we do work with hospice, for example, and hospices are often attached to home health organizations. There's kind of senior living spaces, insurance. There's lots of different journeys that we can kind of go on that are in that sphere. So I'd say in transparency, yeah, we've definitely expanded our vision of saying, how do we help in the end of life arena? But still, bread and butter, 95% of what we do is in death care,
Okay.
fully with funeral homes, cemeteries, pet loss. Yeah.
What do your kids think about you working in death care?
Oh gosh, it is hilarious because I work from home. Our teams are 100% remote, so it's like dad's up in the office above the garage, and what is he doing? And I had my 13-year-old. He had to job shadow for one of his classes, and I said, "All right, son, he had to spend like 4 to 5 hours." I'm like, "You're gonna come and see what dad does every day," and it was really good. I mean, I've been at this for years and they just kind of think, oh, death, weird, this is creepy. And at the end, I think he was really proud and fascinated at the way you can make money and build a business by just solving basic human needs.
Yeah.
And when you do it with the right intention behind it, then business naturally can flow. And I hope that I kind of helped plant that seed. But I think, besides them wondering what my latest swag is that they can use, I've done like thread wallets or Stanley cups, and they love getting whatever swag items we have surplus in. Aside from that, they haven't really cared. But I think the older they get, even my daughter Lily, she's 17 and a half, and we had her help this year on the holiday campaigns because that's our busiest season. And she helped do responding. And when that happens, it's just kind of game changing for them. It's like their friends' parents that work aren't doing meaningful work like that. And when they get to see this, they're like, holy cow, you're like helping people. This is amazing. I'm like, yeah, that's what dad does above the garage every day. It's pretty fun.
That's right. Not just playing on his phone.
Yeah, exactly.
That's cool. I mean, I think it's interesting because like you and I both live in areas that are very rich with entrepreneurs and a lot of different business opportunities and business growth and different rooms with people that are not in death care that we get to we get to hang out with. But it's always fascinating to me how, like, I'll walk into those rooms and go, okay, like, how do I have a conversation and not talk about death? Like, what is it that you do? And I default to like, oh, we own a creative agency, and like,
Yeah,
always lands on like, so like, do you have a like a core niche of clients? Because I mean, riches are in the niches for sure. In
sure.
every business room you go into, that's a conversation. It always amazes me how quickly you become the most interesting person, like in the room, in that
So
conversation.
true.
You bring up death care. Like the consumer is so curious, regardless of age.
Hmm.
You and I are not young whippersnappers anymore, but we're also like
Yes, we
not
are.
old. Okay. In our brains, we are. But it's
I
like we
try.
go into different rooms and like I'll talk to a 22-year-old just that's building a massive sales organization, just crushing it. And as soon as I bring up death in some regard, it's like an immediate curiosity
I
that
know.
just carries a conversation. And to me, it blows my mind of how still inside of this bubble that we live in death care, we work with hundreds of funeral homes every single month on creative campaigns where it's like, oh, we can't talk about these things. You're talking about these things hundreds of thousands of times a day back and forth with people that want to have these crazy conversations and they want to talk about the details. We're trying to go, okay, we need to talk about some of these details through marketing in a way that's engaging a conversation. Yet the profession as a whole is still very guarded behind a wall. Um, are we missing it? Are we missing it? Are we failing the consumer because of that?
For sure. And I think that I have always loved following your lead on this. I think just the nature of disrupt media beyond just the day-to-day work that you do, I think that you constantly are challenging the industry at large to think outside that box and to stretch a little bit. Yeah, do we still need to be respectful of the dead and of the dying and of those that are grieving? You betcha. But we live in a very different world. And I think you and I both do our best to have a pulse on the different ways in which the world is having those conversations. And it's like, I hang out a fair amount now. It's weird that I do this, but I'm on TikTok
Mm-hmm.
a fair amount of time now. Why? It's not just because the videos can be addicting as you go down the algorithm rabbit hole, but you learn a lot about it's like your own focus group and study session because you get to learn a ton about the way the world is viewing those things. And if we just stay in that box as an industry, I think that yes, we will miss it. And the industry, I don't want to say could be disrupted, but it truly could. I think that there's enough people out there that want to disrupt it if we're not willing to conform to a new way of being able to discuss death. And so you have to be willing to a certain extent, stick to your core and the thing that you do best at, but you need a certain amount of bravery, especially in 2025 and moving forward, to try different ways, be it social media, text messaging, and different engagement strategies, because the world's moving wicked fast.
Yeah.
But yet these are still like very human needs that still need to be met and addressed. And if we're not there to meet them, they're going to find somebody else that will. So
Yeah. Yeah.
yeah, I'm with you
No,
on
you're
that.
exactly right. And I love what you said about TikTok because, like, that's a question I get asked all the time should our funeral home be on TikTok? Do we need to create content on TikTok? And my default is for the short term return on investment, no, it's
Right.
that's not the platform. Is there the opportunity long term to build brand there? Yeah, 100%, because the algorithm is so good
Mhm.
that you see a lot of content that is very narrow to what your interests are. I don't follow hardly anybody on TikTok because I don't need to. The
No.
algorithm feeds me all the AI marketing content I could possibly want, funeral content that I
Yep.
could possibly want. But what I will say is, I believe that TikTok sets culture. And if
Yeah.
you don't believe that, just if you've got teenage kids, follow your teenage kids. There is a new dance, there is a new song, there is something new on a weekly basis that was created and is influencing culture because it was viral on TikTok one
100%.
time. And there is ways that funeral homes can take that culture, those conversations, those sound bites, those themes that are driving culture, and incorporate them immediately into marketing. And I'll give you one simple case is Titan Caskets. So we work with Titan Caskets. Any of the content that's on social media is our creative team. You know, a influencer does a cold face bath in Saratoga spring water. It goes crazy viral. And then immediately within a couple hours, we can create a campaign, launch it on social. And now you've tapped into this ecosystem of hundreds of millions of people. Is it all valuable? No, but best known is better than best. And when you're
Yeah.
best known, now you can serve more families. So I love that you're scrolling on TikTok. I get lost in the scroll as well, but I fully believe that TikTok, like hip hop music, like
Yep.
it sets culture.
Yep.
It's what we follow. So, you know, should funeral professionals spend hours a day creating content for TikTok? On the short term, no, but is it worth it to scroll and understand what's happening? 1,000%. So
Yep.
I love that. And, you know, we have kids that are about the same age and going through the same things in life. And it's cool. Like, I do think that there is a value of our kids understanding what it is that we're doing,
Yeah.
not from the aspect of like, my dad is a creative and does creative things. My dad created text messaging platform, but going deeper and understanding like why those
Yeah.
things were created and the problems that are being solved. Like I love that your kids are experiencing that and seeing that, man, like there is a bigger why attached to let's start a text messaging platform, let's
Yep.
create fun content on social media. Like there's a much deeper component and that there's real good happening because you and I exist and hundreds of other companies in this space and tens of thousands of funeral homes that serve families in a way that, you know, is right for that family in that moment.
Yep.
And there's power in that. So, you know, I think that's exciting and seeing kind of how our kids' minds shift around. Like I'll never forget the first time I put a casket key in their stocking just for fun. It was like everything else didn't matter. They carried that thing around because it was so cool. Like they had no idea really like
Yeah.
what it really did, but they were like 4 or 5. Who cares?
Yeah.
Like it's cool. So
That's
man,
awesome.
I appreciate you taking the time to jam with me. You're actually coming to Scottsdale in
Yep.
June. You're going to be a part of our Funeral On conference, which today, as soon as we're done, the first registration email is going to be sent out
Sweet.
in preparation for that. You have been a part of the unconference for the last 4
2020.
years.
Yeah.
Yeah. Or no, the
The
original
original.
unconference.
Yeah. I was
Oh,
there.
yeah. You've been an OG from the beginning. So I am very, very grateful for that. I appreciate it. It's the only, we call it an unconference. So it's the only virtual funeral event where you have 20 plus companies sitting on panels and talking about what's most important in death care. And so you'll be a part of our marketing panel because there's a marketing aspect to
Yeah.
what you're doing as well. That's super powerful. But for the first time ever, we're going to have Batesville, Matthews, and Wilbert on a panel. And to my
So
knowledge, and all of the old heads that I've asked, that has never happened in death care before. So that'll be a live panel. That's going to be pretty cool. But
it's awesome.
I'm
I
psyched to
love the
have
work you're
you.
doing, man. Yeah, you're moving the conversation forward. It's killer. And I think that's the cool thing about it. It doesn't matter if there's competitors that are there. It's as long as everyone's mutually aligned in purpose, which is the profession at large, then good things come from that. And you do such a good job of bringing any of those walls down and helping everybody also just come together for the good of the profession. So always happy to support that and just looking forward to the conversation again this year. It's going to be awesome.
I appreciate it, man. So I'll see you at ICCFA probably, but
Let's
definitely
do
hang
it.
out.